laptop in class, then that works really well, but some people don't. Also, like if you do the assignments, turn it in. I don't know if this works with the new way that Turnitin works. I can't remember actually. Like the way I used to set it up, you could tell who had opened up the assignment to look at the grade. Like you can still tell, okay. And then I could kind of go after the ones who hadn't and sort of pester them. And so that was my thing. But then when I'm teaching online, I can't, there's no class time. So I made a quiz, like a essay one comments quiz, which worked really well to get them to check the comments. But then usually after that, they would look at the comments because they would find them useful. The problem is, and I really felt this last semester because I had 2 online classes, is first I spent all this time writing like meaningful comments on the papers. And then I have to spend all this time grading the quizzes, which is really boring for the most part. And it's not as quick as you would think.
Because the issue with using Canvas as a quiz, like you might be able to do it more quickly by just doing it as a Google survey. I know it's like then you have to enter it, but like I don't know. Oh, or you just set up the quiz. They might be able to help you with setting up the quiz. I feel like the grading quizzes on Canvas is a pain in the ass when it's like a open-ended question that they're answering, right? Because you have to read them all. It doesn't let you just go to the ones and all that stuff. So maybe there's a tech solution to that.
Well, Elizabeth, do you want them to do you grade it in a way that they get credit just as long as they answered everything, or do they get different points based on like the quality of their answers in the quiz? Like what level of grading do you do to it?
I mean, the answers are pretty simple.
Yeah.
And like what was your number grade? What was your letter grade? Like look at the rubric, under which categories did you lose points? So it's like if they look, like all they have to do is look and like cut and paste, right? In the section where it says what worked, what did you do well? Do you think that you could reproduce these things in another essay? In the section that it says what needs work, what do you need to work on? Do you understand how to address this problem? And like some students will be, like, yes, no, like whatever. I don't care. Like, as long as they just as long as they've identified what they did well, as long as I can see that their eyes went over the material.
Just yes, like give them all credit in the grade book.
I do give all credit if they fill it in, but I have to look at it to see if they've done it question by question.
So if you set it up as a graded survey, not a graded quiz, it'll just give them credit as long as they answer everything automatically.
That's lovely.
But sometimes they answer things like, I can't find that section. See what I'm saying? Like, I don't want them to get credit for that because that's nonsense. Of course they can find that section. You know what I'm saying?
Particularly.
Yeah.
And you need to read them all if that's how you want to do it.
Okay.
You could also
I'll buy it in some way for yourself.
Yeah, you could also grade like the first, if you do it regularly, you could grade the first one like that so you can catch those to be like, it's right here. That's not an answer. And then after that, you can set them up as graded surveys. So like you're always prompting them to check, but it grades them automatically.
Okay.
I think, and maybe, so this is another thing so Elizabeth, I think, has like a repository of responses. Don't you have like a repository of responses for your essay that you then like copy and paste into your
yes
into your essay?
You mean into the grading box?
Yes.
Yes.
So I think I also had a question for Allison about like if is there any easier way to do, like, do you just keep it on a Word document?
Yes.
Okay, is there any easier way to?
I mean, that's why I like grading on Turnitin, because it does save your comments. Like you can make a comment and save it to like my comments. So when I grade essays, I do use the Turnitin feedback tool and not the speed grader for that reason, because I don't want a separate document where I have comments. I can't find them or whatever. I just have it and Turnitin. So it's like, remember to integrate your quote. And, like, this is missing the bottom slice, or I don't know, whatever the hell I say. Yeah.
I just find it, like, for me, like, I need more flexibility because I tried that. And I find that, my comments are often very similar, but they're not always exactly the same.
Yeah,
And I think with the Turnitin, the saved comment, like,
it is exactly, you're right.
yeah, so that didn't work for me. I mean, it's a system now, so it's not that clunky for me, but yeah, if there's a better technical fix, that would be fantastic.
Well, there is you can save comments in Canvas too. There's the comment library, but don't get excited. It has some headaches with it, which I think, Elizabeth, you've experienced, which might be why you use a spreadsheet now. Like they're kind of hard to edit, and I'm not sure that they either don't move between courses or they all are in every course, so it's not like a complete robust tool in itself. I think those are good for kind of like your maybe most common comments, or like if you always start your comments kind of the same way or something like that. Yeah, so they migrate to all courses. So there's some things like that that make them a little annoying. So it is there, but a spreadsheet might actually be the better solution, especially if you need a variety of comments and they might be specific to your courses, specific to assignments, because Canvas doesn't let you organize them in any way. So.
Can we also get back to like the original question though? Because I feel like the question of like how we deal with keeping our comments organized is like a little bit different, but sorry, I just started taking this new medication that for some reason hits me at this hour, and I'm getting so loopy right now. But I feel like the issue is that you started with is like, why do students maybe not read our comments, or how do we make meaningful comments? And I think like I went to this interesting session at NCORE that she was talking about that struggle. And she's also an English professor. And she was saying that she started doing this thing with her essays where she makes the students say, like, what kind of feedback do you want on this essay? And they can say like what they want. And then she only addresses that, instead of doing all the comments that justify the grade that we tend to do. She just does that. And when she surveyed students afterwards, they were like, she had some like quotes, and it was like, this is so helpful because like, I don't want to read, like, instead of you talking about all this stuff that I don't care about, like you're telling me you're giving me feedback on the things I want, kind of thing. And it was like really counter to because I think I do that. I think I grade, especially essays, majors, assignments, with like a certain way where I'm justifying like everything about like my grade, like, so, blah, blah, blah. And maybe they don't care about any of that stuff. So it was just a way to engage the students in the process of feedback that I thought was interesting. And that I haven't tried that, and I'm not sure that would work for me, but I like the idea of like having students have a say to us, like what kind of feedback is useful. Like, I think that's meaningful. And maybe also makes our work, like she was also talking about like, how do you make our workload sustainable, right? And I think that that's part of it. Like she found that was more sustainable. And I think too, like even in an online class where I'm leaving comments on everything so much, it feels like I can leave a short comment when I'm grading with it incomplete because of contract grading. But it's just like, I can say, great job. when I give an incomplete, I'm very clear about why it's incomplete and like what they need to do to make it complete. And like I've had students say like, yeah, that's helpful. And then I've also just felt like I get more students redo their work to make it complete because for I don't know why, but for some reason the incomplete thing like gets them. Whereas like before, if it was like out of 10 points and I gave them a 6 or something, they were like, yeah, that's fine. 6 is good, you know, but I feel like they just get a complete incomplete and they're like, oh, it's incomplete. I better redo it. And then the comments are there for them. And I've had that feedback from students like, you're very clear about like why it's incomplete and what I need to do to fix it. And then they fix it. So I don't know. I think there's something about the interaction with students that I feel like is I want to explore that more. Like how do we do feedback that feels meaningful to students?
I think that's a great idea. Like, I really want to try that. I'm gonna get essays in on Friday, and I think in class tomorrow, after I take them to the bookstore to collect all their free stuff. I'm gonna ask them.
Yeah, and she has them like they have to submit their assignment with that.
Oh,
So like
okay.
they submit the essay and say what specifically, and I'll see if I can find like like her resources about that, but I just thought that was so interesting, right? And just like that idea of like how do we make the workload sustainable, right? Because it can feel overwhelming and meaningful for students, both things, right? So yeah, I don't know.
I want to bring in Sarah because her hand is up too.
I'm sorry.
First of all, thank you, Karen, for bringing that up because I obviously don't have quite as many essays in both of my disciplines as what the composition folks have to do, but I do have them, and I've been for the intermediate Spanish class, I've been doing something similar where I don't make overarching comments. What I will do is I download their essays. I will highlight things in different colors, and there's a key as to what kind of an error it is. Is this a lexical error? Is this a syntactic error? Is this something, right? Whatever it is. There's like 4 or 5 codes. And in part, it was because of feedback I was getting from my students where I would sit there and pore over these things and like at least 30 minutes to an hour on each essay. And that's not a good thing when you have 35 students. That's not good. So that shrunk my time, but I've been trying to figure out how to do that with my oral assignments. So when my students give the feedback or when they comment on things, which is a weekly assignment, that's been a hard struggle for me because there's so much that I could do. I've learned to not be so nitpicky and do more general comments, but I find that whereas my students now read the composition feedback and act upon it in some way, shape, or form, they don't do it with the oral stuff, which is weekly. And that's a balance I think I'm still trying to find too.
Yeah.
Well, I think that raises a question too. I don't know if has anyone used the Canvas video comments, because I was wondering like if anyone has any success stories about that, because I feel like that could be a useful, I always wanted to say like I'll use the audio comments because I feel like I can like be better at the big picture and not get into as much of the like nitty gritty justifying the grade stuff that we do. But I don't know if anyone's used those at all and if it has like been helpful, or then are you just making like 10-minute videos for each student that they don't watch?
So yes and no is the answer. Yes, because you're doing an audio or video comment, you go shorter. Absolutely, because you're just trying to do one answer. It's not unlike text where you can go back, revise it, blah, blah, blah. You're just trying to do, but here's your information. So they are shorter. The problem is they are not auto-transcribed in any way, shape, or form. So if you have somebody who needs adaptive technology and you give either an audio or a video comment, they're not going to be able to access it for the most part. And so there's a plus and a minus, right? Yeah. Yes, your comments are shorter and to the point, but you're going to have students, and remember, we don't know how many of our students actually are using those technologies. We only know some of them. So it's a plus and minus, right? So yeah.
Allison, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we use the audio and video comments in when we teach QOTL 1 and 2. And they're really helpful, especially the video ones. Some of the stuff we teach is technical, so being able to just show people like, oh, this is how you actually do this or correct this thing, is really nice. And I agree, doing the audio comments, it's definitely you're able to be quicker, but also I think especially for your asynchronous classes, it's a little more personable for them to hear a person talking rather than just always reading text. So I think they're great. And since they are an individual, instructor to student thing, they don't have to be captioned and things like that. But like Sarah said, if you know of a student, if a student tells you that they have that they're using assistive technology, then you can just switch to text for that person. If they don't tell you, that's a tough one. But
maybe you
yeah.
can ask, right? Like, again, like maybe you just ask your students, like, how would you like to get feedback on this? Would you like it to be a submission comment? Would you like it to be an audio, or would you know what I mean? Like, I feel like that could be a straightforward, like, way for you. I mean, of course, then you have to keep track of who wants what kind of feedback.
Yeah.
So there's that, which I find challenging, when you have like a full load of classes and, you're not seeing folks here. But I feel like you asking folks for it, because my concern is that like some folks, like, technology is not like the bet, like it's just complicated. And so they might be like, what, you want me to watch a video right now for this? Like, just write it, so, but then the person might feel like, oh, I would rather watch the video. So just, I feel like it could be a question with students.
You can also,
Allison.
I was just gonna say, you could also think about, like, depending on the type of assignment or the timing in the semester, what format of feedback would make the most sense for you and students. So, maybe there's a certain kind of assignment that you always just do audio comments for because it's pretty quick, it's pretty informal. Doesn't need a lot of feedback, but maybe for other things you use text. So it doesn't always have to be one or the other. And if you let students know in advance, like, these assignments are always going to have this type of feedback, these are always going to have this one, like, let me know if that's going to be a problem for you, then they know in advance and they can let you know. So, like, that's another way to handle it.
Mark, do you feel like, is this kind of like capturing the challenges that you find, or do you feel like there's something that we're missing? Like,
No, not really. I mean, I'm missing anything. It's all, and I think we all have some more experience in that regard. What I'd say is one thing I have been doing for a while that I don't know way to judge really how well this works really, but to save myself some effort and to try to make sure, well, not that they're reading the comments, but to get across the info, after an assignment, especially an essay, but sometimes even the, ask paragraph answer kind of things, I will take some time during class and I'll say, here's what I'm seeing as a group, a lot of people are missing this, or they're, this issue, this problem, whatever. And I'll do it for the, the big things that I'm seeing, and to try to get them at least draw their attention to it in class, so that if they're not reading the comments, they're not paying attention, or maybe half reading, I can kind of reinforce it and go, here's what you guys need to do, or here's what you're missing, or here's what a lot of people are, problems I'm seeing, as a way to, reinforce it and,
and it also like, it makes them feel better because they're not the only one making that mistake, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. I do try to do that. And I also do like for my asynchronous classes, I'll try to do like summative emails that say, kind of list out, just in case, like, if they're not going into the feedback, maybe that's like one other way that they might access like that information. I don't know, Amira, right? Yeah, okay. Well, welcome.
I guess the first, I don't know, 30 minutes.
Yeah, that's okay.
Oh my God, 30 minutes.
So with math, when you give your students feedback, especially for like your online classes, like, Have you found strategies that are good to help ensure that they're reading it, accessing it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
with my announcement, I every time say, please read the feedback. It's gonna be the first one because they don't have the patience to read until the end of the text, but it's gonna be like, I've already gave you feedback, everyone. Please read it because you need it for the next assignment.
Right.
And then it's gonna be like an announcement for everyone.
Mhm.
And then they get used to it with time. Maybe if you skip, but with reducing the grade for the next assignment because they skipped, okay? They will, start to pay attention. I did not use the audio. I'm excited. I'm not teaching online, but next semester I'm so excited because what I used to do is screen recording for myself and to add my voice just because I need to make things like feel like with people cheese. And then I'm so excited to use this. I tried to use it, but I said, oh, they will hear my voice in person. But I'm excited to use it as well. But I follow up with the students. They know from the syllabus from day one. When I introduce myself, the first video, hi, my name is Amira. And you have to read the feedback because we are working for my classes for projects. We're building projects, so they need to see the feedback so they can build on their project. And then, I just keep following. I really bother students a lot with Canvas messages saying feedback is important.
Yeah.
Can I say something? I know I don't
Yeah.
teach, but I love this
You
conversation.
count. Yeah, you have taught for many years, so
I
it's
have
all
taught
good.
and I still take classes, and I think of it from a perspective of, you've written something and then you feel this vulnerability that somebody else is going to look at it and then they're going to say something. And either you're very invested in it or you don't care at all, or there's a range of, I'm just doing what I need to do. And what I used to try and do is reduce that vulnerability by having a conversation earlier on or on an ongoing basis saying, just unraveling this idea of opening your work out to others and how to engage. So I do like this idea of if I got an incomplete, that would be probably easier for me as an individual to then respond to than if I didn't care and I thought, okay, I just want to pass and a C is fine. So nothing definitive. I'm not saying I was this great teacher, but it's a great conversation of how do you prepare yourself to receive feedback? Because basically that's how I try and look at it. Am I ready to receive feedback? Are my students ready? My students are probably way more vulnerable than I am because at this stage, I think I know as much as I'll know. And then somebody will tell me, no, you need to know more. But when you're starting out, I already know I probably don't know enough. And now somebody's going to tell me that you don't know enough. And so that's going to be painful. There's that feeling that comes with it.
As for my classes, because we're working on projects, the thing they know that if they read the feedback, I will ask them when you would like to resubmit.
Right.
Then everyone is just waiting for the feedback because they wanted either to pass or wanted to higher their grades. But from day one, they know that every feedback is an opportunity. Includes an opportunity. So they read it and they follow up. We just really, we communicate almost via
Instantly,
feedback.
right? Yeah, no, I
This
think
is-
that's true when you say that to students, like, so this is it, blah, 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 so feel free to, I always say, I don't say when are you going to, but I love that. I love that wording, but I think just like, yeah, so, resubmit and let me know when you, kind of thing, then it's just like, oh, I have that chance. And, writing is supposed to be this iterative process where it's not, so I feel like it makes sense, to just kind of assume they're going to do it is also helpful because a lot of students assume that they can't redo something, they can't change their grade, so it's good to remind them.
But also with the feedback, it's not only the feedback, it's also directions on what you need to do next.
Yeah.
Oh, you missed this and that. Oh, I have an example. I absolutely spent a lot. It's like, yeah, I mean, it is important. It's not just, don't just leave them like flying. It's just, no, this question was wrong. Oh, I have an example to share with you. And then, yeah, it's gonna be very long feedback, but I think we should give them some sense of direction and hope. It's like, don't, that's zero, it's one, it's but no, it is, learning is a process. And they understand that, oh, they did some mistakes, but they still have chances because they are learning, they are in the process. This is very normal, very natural. This is how things are supposed to happen.
So what about the student? And I'm just gonna put this out there because this keeps happening to me. I'm sure it happens to other folks. What about the student who, you've given like very detailed, very helpful feedback and you've asked them to come to your office hours and they, just continue to make like the same, like I often have this thing where students will, only do half of the discussion assignment, right? They don't respond to another student. And like most students learn like the first time that they make that error and, we figure it out. But then sometimes I'll have a student who does that all semester, right? And I don't know, like, at some point, like, I really don't know what to do because I'm like, I can't tell if you're not reading these comments, like I can't, or if you just think that there's like a mathematical miracle that's gonna happen or like exactly what's going on. So I don't know if any folks have like figured out, some strategies. I mean, I think the emailing, obviously like using like alternative ways to contact them, but anything that kind of like really encourages students to read comments when you run across those students who don't.
Did you check to see if they're stuck in a time loop?
Yeah.
I don't know that there's anything you can do about that. You know what I mean? You've done everything that you can. In an online setting, I feel like you've done everything you can. In an in-person setting, you grab that person at the end of class, right? But in an online setting, you've done all the things that you can in terms of the other forms of communication. Like that's what I've done too. It's like, I've been leaving you all these comments and you don't seem to be getting them. I go into WebSmart sometimes and you can see their personal emails as well as their SNCCD emails, and I'll email both of those. But I think that at some point you just say like, I've done my due diligence. And when you get that bad grade that maybe it's a surprise, maybe it's not a surprise. Like it could be not a surprise to them either. Like we really don't know what's going on in their heads when that happens,
I mean, one thing that with online classes, we really love the discussion, right? And then one thing that I'm planning to do, because I have the rubric for the discussion, right? And we have like, for instance, 30% of the grade into replying and communicating with, so that's like initiating the discussion with other classes. But then I think, I just that most students really answer only the discussion questions, but also we need them to talk to other people, right?
Yeah.
How about we adjust the grade to that discussion if it feels very important to that class? Instead of make it 30%, let's make it, for instance, 50%.
But I feel like it's not just about like upping. I remember a conversation with Elizabeth years ago where we were trying to get students to do this assignment and kept upping the point value of it and they still wouldn't do it. And like, I think that speaks to like that's not always how we get students, right? Like to do something is to like,
to
up the point value of it or make it a larger percentage of your grade. Like I saw, Sarah, your comment. Yeah, I think we all do that we are making the reply part of the grade. But it's like, how do we engage students in that? And like this time, for my first time in my online class, I did an assignment the first week that was just like discussion guidelines discussion. And it was like, these are community agreements. I framed it with like, in an online class, it's really easy to hide behind like the fact that we're in an online class and like, how do we have meaningful discussion and how do we really make this like the way a person-to-person class would feel? And we had like a really interesting conversation. Like there were some interesting posts around that. And I don't know if that will make any difference for the rest of the semester, but I feel like it's some way of like engaging students in that process of like if this is really going to be a class where you get like, especially for literature, where you have to talk about it together. Like, and I have also built in some assignments where like before the essay, go back and read all of the posts about that story and then write a reflection about what your classmates said. Like you're sort of building in things like that. But I feel like it's to engage, to have students buy into the idea of replying to students themselves. And I think when you get the one or two outliers who just keep refusing to do it, like they haven't bought into it, like they haven't, and there's kind of nothing you can do to make them buy into it if they just won't, you know? So that's sort of like where you cut your losses, I think. But I do think like this whole thing about like the point stuff around it, I feel like I feel mixed about, because I feel like it has to be that there's some real meaning for them. And it's not just that it's because it's 30% of my grade, you know, like they have to see some value in actually reading each other's posts and replying to each other. And how do we frame an assignment so that that's true for them, you know, that it is valuable for them. And I've heard of other English folks doing things like, you know, you can or you must quote from somebody else in the class in your essay, right? If you're writing about this, like you use a quote from somebody else in the class's discussion, things like that. I haven't tried those things yet, but I think those are all like on the spectrum of like, how do we make this actually more of a partnership, and less about like the points. And I'm not trying to pick on you, Amira, with your point stuff.
I mean,
and you're a math person, so it's different.
We
It's
are
just like,
always
yeah.
more in our motivation for students, but when it comes to reality, sometimes we need to just, you know, grades are maybe our last hope. I mean, it's different for mathematics, right? For mathematics, it's different. For English, it's the discussion is so important. Yeah. For mathematics, we need them to answer and discuss, but by the end, they need to understand the concept and then by themselves. And writing is not very, very crucial for the replying and stuff. But for English, I know it is very important. But when also you said this, how about you go refer to that post, create an assignment, and you ask them to refer to that post or their discussion with a classmate. But also you are using the grades. I mean, what I see here is like, you are using the grade also to really reinforce the I mean, it is we're kind of going into the same thing, but I mean, it's very nice if we just think of some inner motivation about it's very interesting.
I mean, it's a balance, right? Yeah, but I feel like I see
Allison and then Elizabeth.
I think I was just gonna say, I definitely agree that sometimes it's just like, and I even remember doing this as a student, taking online classes and just like looking at my capacity for what I'm able to accomplish and having to like make some choices, and like discussion replies often being the thing that was like, I that's gonna get like the axe, because I'm just trying to like do as much as I can, you know what I mean? I can't do everything. So I feel like a lot of times students are making those kind of decisions. And, you know, contract grading and things like that, we are empowering students to make those decisions. We're just making it formal, right? So sometimes I think those are the decisions that students are making. And I even see it when we teach QOTL. It's funny because like all of our faculty participants do the same thing. We have people who write great responses, and we have people who never want to respond, or, you know, they don't respond, and we write a comment, you know, taking those points away, and then they go and they say like, you know, great job, I liked what you said, just to like get us off their back kind of thing, you know? So it's like a lot of the same struggles as QOTL, which I think is really funny. some of the things that we've tried in QOTL is like doing small group discussions rather than just giant class discussions. And that usually motivates people to respond because it's more obvious when they don't, you know? And then the other thing too is like taking some of the pressure off and sometimes making discussions the replies optional. So like having discussions sometimes where like you need to post and if you want to reply, great, but you don't have to. And I feel like sometimes that takes that pressure off and lessens the workload a little bit so that, you know, people don't feel like they're just being asked to do busy work. Not that that's what we're asking them to do, right? But just so we don't give people that impression, or so we emphasize the responses on the discussions where we really, really want to see them, you know? So those are some of the things we've tried in QOTL to mixed success. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was like, again, in my online classes, I do have them do weekly forums and I do ask them to respond. And there's like a wide variety, but there's always a couple of quality of responses, but there's always a couple of students that really engage and really do well. And what tends to happen is that they find each other and they
Respond to each
form
other.
this
Yeah.
nexus, and sometimes other people will stumble into the nexus and the nexus will grow. But I've been thinking more and more, and I'm thinking about this for my face-to-face classes too, about being very intentional about forming groups. And so like I actually said it, like if students are having trouble, I would say to them, I'm like, well, have you been reading, you know, Rogers and Melinda's responses? Like you should be looking at them and you should be looking to get help from the other students because there's only one of me and there's like, you know, 26 of you. And I think like you can, you know, not immediately, but after you've been with a class for a minute, like you can figure out who is going to model you know, substantive, meaningful, useful feedback, and then push other students who maybe like, you know, never took it seriously before. Look, this is what it could be.
Yeah.
This is what you could get, and this is what you could give.
Yeah.
And I think that's like one way, because it's sometimes it's just shocking to me, like how good they are at it and how hard they try.
Also, do you do because I stopped doing that where you can't see other people's posts before you post. And I just let them see. And I think that that's kind of like gets into what Elizabeth's saying. So like if someone posts something, because I've heard from students who struggle, especially second language students, they'll say, it's really helpful for me to be able to see what other people, how they address this assignment. And then in my instructions, I'm like, you can't say the same thing as somebody else. Like you need to do something else, but you can read what other people did to give you an idea of what a substantive response looks like, or even how to address this question, you know, whatever it is. So I think that's also like another like little techie thing that I just changed of letting people do that. But I like that idea of like pushing people to like, yeah, then read so-and-so's, you know, I think. And with that comment, one of the students in the first week discussion thing that we did around that was saying like, I like to see, like, it's frustrating to me when other students don't put in effort into their responses because that makes me not want to put effort into my responses. So like they put that out there and, you know, we all got to comment or at least read that. And I think it's more meaningful coming from another student than from me. Like I can say like, you should do this because it's more meaningful. When their classmate says, I want you to do it, it has a different resonance, you know?
One other thing that, just a little thing that may seem to make a big difference in the online again, is that I ask them to address each other by name.
Me too. Yeah.
And it's helpful to me when I'm grading because I know
Exactly,
who's
yeah.
in cahoots with whom.
Yeah.
But then also like it does, and then you see like their greetings, again, in some cases, not all cases, become more and more friendly and familiar, you know? So that's just a little thing.
One thing that I wished we have in Canvas, I asked Erica to, if we can tag. Tag is like at the student, so we just direct students to read other students' replies. So, but Canvas doesn't do, we cannot tag, right? Isn't it? We cannot do the tag, right?
I think
Yeah.
I think with the most recent discussion update, you can now tag people, but let me check and I'll get back to you.
I do use the like, and I use the like only graders can like function, so then I can tell students like, I liked particularly, good examples or whatever in the email. But yeah, that's how I've kind of gotten around it.
Yeah, but I asked Erica, the previous semester, and she said we don't have that, tag up for Canvas, but with the update, I did not try it yet because in person, but it looks like we do have some kind of tag. It's nice, like, when we, like, students, they love it, they do it, right? They do
Yeah,
it with the
that's
social
true.
media, and so you direct the student to student, this is gonna be very, if it's there, it's gonna be awesome, actually.
One thing this is making me think about, because one thing I really like for my hybrid class and my particular method of hybrid is 2 hours a week in person, 1 hour virtual, it's 1 hour asynchronous.
1.5 hours.
I guess so. I think about it as like a 3-hour class.
No, but I mean, like in person, you only have 1.5 hours, right?
Oh, it's a little more, isn't it like 140? Whatever, it doesn't matter.
I just never feel like I have enough time, that's why I'm kidding.
So I often will like come back to assignments when we're in person and like point out particularly good examples of things. And so I was just trying to think about if there was a way that I could then like do that in my fully asynchronous class, like maybe just make a little video that's like, hey, like, welcome to this week. Here are a couple really good like posts from last week, and this is what's really great about them or whatever. Just try to sort of like mimic the way I do it in hybrid class, because I think it's so helpful in the hybrid class because it also encourages them, because I think part of the issue is that they don't automatically necessarily see the value in the discussions. In particular, if they sort of like have an assumption that they're mostly learning from me and not their classmates, which I think like can be common. So pointing out what students did that was really good, I think can sometimes like encourage some students to be like, oh, that is, maybe more meaning in this.
I mean, one thing that I keep thinking about, I know it's valuable, the discussion is very valuable, right? But also we do in person, we do have students who are completely not engaging, but they are doing great. They are learning, but in silence, just completely. I mean, I know the value of it, but also I don't know how to balance things. I mean, I had students who did great for everything, but not the discussion. Not active with the discussion. They were not responding, nothing but just they post and leave and they learn. I mean, I'm just trying to think about, I know the value as a teacher, but also how can we balance things? I mean, yes, we deduct grades and stuff, but the purpose also we need students to, but these people are learning in silence too.
I mean, I think there's different ways that people participate. Like participation doesn't have to look us one way. I feel like this is a good conversation for another session, right? Like, how do we define participation and learning, right? And how do we make that happen in our classes? And how does that reflect the way that we grade, right? So that I think that I've been grappling with that issue, right? With contract grading a little bit too. And I think that's a little bit different conversation than about, meaningful feedback, right? Which is today's, and we're out of time anyway, but I feel like Amira's bringing up a great topic for another conversation with colleagues.
Yeah, and I want to be respectful of everybody's time, and also I want to stop recording this.